When Cheng Yu awoke again, he was in a golden cage. To tear open the void previously, he had staked everything, greatly depleting his spiritual energy. Although he had successfully escaped to safety, he also suffered a backlash, barely clinging to life. He had thought the matter would end there, but in his myriad calculations, he had overlooked his master. Even if he no longer had to consider the Shinmen, he could not abandon his beloved master. He should have realized earlier that his relationship with his master could not escape the eyes of the joyous Union Palace. Cough, cough, cough. Cheng Yu coughed several times, propping himself up from the bed. His face was ashen, paler than paper, appearing even weaker than when he first arrived at the joyous Union Palace. His brow furrowed slightly as he slowly rose and walked out. The golden cage was enormous, divided into several sections. Lush vegetation thrived all around. Clouds and mist swirled, and the spiritual energy was active and pure. If he wasn't mistaken, this must be on an immortal mountain. Just as he rounded a stone wall, the view suddenly opened up. The bright light made Cheng Yu's pupils contract sharply, and what met his eyes was a graceful, slender figure reclining on a jade couch. Awake, Chi Huan leaned casually, fanning herself, dressed only in a semi-transparent silk garment that perfectly outlined her shapely curves. Her two long, straight legs were crossed and stretched out on the couch. From afar, she looked alluring and voluptuous, like an imperial concubine in a spring slumber painting. Cheng Yu instinctively averted his gaze, and only after a long moment did he speak in a hoarse voice. What transpired between you and I has nothing to do with my master. I begged the palace mistress to show mercy and spare his life. From the day he became the head of the Immortal Alliance, he knew he would be surrounded by enemies. Thus, he had never made his relationship with his master public. Yet after all these years, he had ultimately implicated the old man. Chi Huan slowly finished a cup of wine, then chuckled. Lord Cheng Yu, your words make it sound as if I'm being unreasonable. When you tore open the void and strode away, why didn't you think of your master? If you hadn't gone back on your word, would this palace have bothered an old man? Cheng Yu's pale lips moved, his complexion even whiter than a flowing cloud. It is my fault. Chi Huan stared at his increasingly aloof face, a wicked smile suddenly playing on her lips. Saving the old man is possible. Come here and serve this palace well. If you please me, this palace will naturally show mercy. Otherwise, Chi Huan narrowed her eyes, her threat unspoken. Although she felt pity for beautiful men, she preferred to conquer them, especially an aloof, pure-hearted, and ascetic ice beauty like Cheng Yu. This escape incident had hurt her too much. If she didn't properly discipline and train him, she would be letting herself down for all the anxiety she'd suffered these past days. She now wanted to see him, with that face of a banished immortal, forced to submit beneath her. What unwilling! Seeing him remain still for so long, Chi Huan raised an eyebrow, her smile unwavering. Lord Cheng Yu had best think of your poor master. It is well known that the joyous Union Palace's punishments are renowned throughout the demonic path. We have countless methods that make people wish for death but cannot die, and wish for life but cannot live. No sooner had she spoken than Cheng Yu clutched his chest, his brow furrowing. As if enduring something, he eventually walked towards her, step by step. The curve of Chi Huan's lips deepened, and her eyes unconsciously grew hazy. His demeanor and appearance were already handsome. Moving while injured, he exuded the poignant allure of she sure clutching her heart, possessing a unique, shattered beauty. Chi Huan watched him, nearly losing her self-control again, but she had to restrain herself. She absolutely couldn't soften or feel pity, or all her days of worry would be for naught. Thinking this, her expression regained some clarity, and her peach blossom eyes slanted towards him, her alluring gaze shimmering. Come, help this palace change. Cheng Yu lowered his gaze, walked to the edge of the couch without a word, and leaned slightly. His fingers, distinct like bamboo joints, settled on the fine silk at her waist. As he drew closer, the cool scent at his nose grew more enticing. Chi Huan ultimately couldn't resist taking a deep breath, and her whole being felt light. His scent was her aphrodisiac, constantly seducing her. If not for that, it would likely not have been so easy to find his hiding place this time, as Cheng Yu had merely observed the situation from the shadows and not immediately taken the bait. Hold me. As her clothes fell to the floor, Chi Huan reached out her hands, unceremoniously ordering him. At this moment, she was left with only a sheer gauze, half fallen, revealing a slender waist that made one blush and their heart race just by looking. Cheng Yu pursed his lips slightly, bent down, and lifted her into his arms, then straightened his body. Chi Huan naturally wrapped her arms around his neck, her delicate chin tilting towards the diagonally opposite direction. Over there. Cheng Yu turned as instructed. Before them was an exceptionally wide, round bed, situated right next to the edge of the golden cage. Outside lay a mountain landscape shrouded in clouds and mist. If one were to look down from above the clouds, they would see a cylindrical golden cage prominently standing atop the mountain, like a giant's crown, glittering with golden light, forming a unique spectacle of its own. How is it? What do you think of the golden cage this palace built for you? Chi Huan, seeing his gaze fall on the cage, deliberately tugged at his dark hair and asked. Her answer was silence. The immortal lowered his gaze, his brow slightly furrowed, seeming to endure something, but more so, displaying indifference. Chi Huan scoffed, jumping onto the bed barefoot and leaning back against the jade pillow. Take off your clothes and get up here yourself. Cheng Yu's body stiffened, and he made no move for a long moment. Is this how you serve someone? Chi Huan's slender brows arched high, a playful, provocative smirk spreading at the corner of her eye. But in an instant, she met a pair of extremely deep and serene eyes. He watched her silently, his gaze subtle, shimmering, and ethereal, as if drifting 1,000 li away in that instant. How could he be a mere plaything in her grasp? Chi Huan was suddenly stunned for a moment, then quickly recovered, her expression suddenly turning somewhat displeased, her tone even impatient. This palace's patience is limited. If you continue to act so self-righteously aloof and coy, don't blame this palace for being ruthless and cruel. I imagine that old man's bones wouldn't survive many rounds of torture, would they? Cheng Yu's brow furrowed for a moment. Then he suddenly swept his wide sleeve, and the next moment, his dustless, white robe floated gracefully to the ground. The immortal's dark hair fell loose, his inner garment's collar half open, revealing deeply set collarbones and large expanses of fair skin. It made Chi Huan's heart flutter. She longed to personally strip him clean. And in fact, she fully intended to do just that. She had underestimated the beauty's allure to her. She couldn't wait to toy with him slowly. She needed to satisfy her craving first. So, with a soft cry, she pounced, rolling around on the bed with him for several turns. Without another word, she buried her head in his neck and rubbed against him intimately in various ways, not forgetting to take a deep breath at the end. So fragrant. Cheng Yu, without changing expression, turned his face to the side and slowly closed his eyes. But Chi Huan precisely refused to let him have his way. Pressing against his high nose bridge, she yelled, "Open your eyes." Seeing no movement from him for a long time, Chi Huan simply started to use her mouth, kissing and biting all along his cheek, as if truly intending to tear him apart and devour him whole. No matter how much Cheng Yu wanted to ignore it all, he ultimately could not resist the invasive presence on him. He suddenly opened his eyes, and in that instant, a cold light flashed, as profound and serene as a starry night. Chi Huan saw this and coldly chuckled, sitting on him with haughty triumph, her fingers intertwined with his. I know you look down on me, but what of it? No matter how aloof, how unwilling you are, tonight you can only become my plaything. Cheng Yu's eyelashes fluttered slightly, then quickly lowered to the side. Chi Huan felt a surge of repressed anger. She couldn't stand his detached and indifferent demeanor and began to speak carelessly. What do you have to be so proud of? You don't want to dual cultivate with me? Then I'll just forcibly possess you, train you into my cultivation vessel, and have you daily for my defilement and pleasure. I'll take you whenever I want you. Let's see if you can still pretend to be so aloof. Cheng Yu's gaze grew even more dangerous than before. From his throat, he uttered 2 words in a deep voice, shameless. Chi Huan unceremoniously sealed his thin lips, teasing his tongue for a while until she was breathless before letting go. So what if I'm shameless? You may be an unattainable moon, but you've lost your purity to a shameless person like me, and can only writhe and yield to pleasure beneath me. Chi Huan pressed against his translucent crimson lips, unwilling to move, carefully catching his slightly quickened breaths. It was truly too sexy. Later, she would definitely have to find a way to force a moan out of him. Such a clear, cold voice, how wonderful it would sound when it succumbed. She could already imagine the stimulating scene. Chi Huan, you had best kill me. Otherwise, one day you will surely die a miserable death. How could I bear to kill you? Chi Huan laughed wantonly. To die beneath a peony flower, even as a ghost, is to be romantic. This palace warns you. Don't even think about escaping with death. Your master's life is still in this palace's hands. Chi Huan threatened him cruelly. She hadn't initially wanted to humiliate him this way. After all, he was her longed-for white moonlight, an idealized figure. But he had been solely focused on escaping. He refused her kindness and chose punishment. Since that was the case, she couldn't be blamed for resorting to despicable methods. A sudden pain shot through Chi Huan's lip. Inadvertently, he had bitten off a piece of skin. She scoffed and bit him back. Ha, this palace likes you like this, so wild. After saying that, she produced a bundle of ropes from somewhere and quickly tied both his wrists, one on each side. Only then did Cheng Yu notice many hooks and chains hanging from the top of the cage, and even swings of various shapes. Chi Huan rubbed her hands together impatiently, eagerly tugging at his thin collar. She huffed and puffed for a long while, and soon, clothes were scattered in a mess around the room. Phew! She took a deep breath, narrowing her eyes at his ice jade-like luster, her heart thumping incessantly. You're truly too beautiful. Chi Huan ultimately couldn't resist. Embracing his narrow waist, she sighed. Alas, you're truly a seductress who wreaks havoc in the world, and the kind that appeals to both men and women. Do you know, my mother once told me that the highest-tier seductresses are often not those infinitely charming, enchanting, and seductive types. Instead, they are as pure as lotus flowers, appearing dignified and aloof, yet incredibly alluring. You are precisely this type. Luckily, you fell into my hands, otherwise who knows how many people would have defiled you. Shut up. Cheng Yu didn't want to hear her nonsense. Yet, as of today, he feared he was fated to succumb. Why should I shut up? Chi Huan sobered up a bit and started acting nasty again, her fingers lingering on his waist and abdomen, her face showing obvious lewdness. I'm quite looking forward to it. I hope you'll still be so defiant in a moment. Outside, the sun gradually slanted westward, and night was about to fall. A faint glow emerged within the golden cage. The lights flickered dimly, on and off. The sound of wind, mixed with silver bell-like laughter, drifted and diffused, causing the flowers, grass, and trees to bow their heads and hide in the surrounding mist and rain. After an unknown period, a shimmering light suddenly appeared within the golden cage. In that instant, the path of emotionless cultivation shattered, and thereafter, only insatiable desires remained. At the foot of Mount Wu, Wu Shi and others gathered together, gazing up at the cloud-shrouded mountain scenery, chatting with great enthusiasm. Fisk, it's been over a month already, and the palace lord hasn't come down once. Chi Su fanned herself, glancing upwards with a remark full of unspoken meaning. In Huan, who was cracking melon seeds, giggled twice at this. It's still early. Where are we even at yet? Exactly. With such an exquisite beauty, the palace lord probably can't bear to leave even for a moment. Ooh, our palace lord is so fierce. Can Lord Cheng Yu's delicate frame possibly endure it? Hearing this, their expressions instantly turned suggestive, and they chatted with keen interest, not holding back at all. You're overthinking it. From what I see, Lord Cheng Yu is quite something himself. Is that true? How can you tell? Just look at his broad shoulders, long legs, and narrow waist. It's clearly a very pleasing figure. And his high nose bridge and slender fingers? His desires probably aren't any less than the palace lord's. Wu Shixin shook her head repeatedly after hearing this. How is that possible? Lord Cheng Yu is an ethereal immortal, someone untainted by worldly desires. How could he be associated with lust? She couldn't imagine Lord Cheng Yu engaging in dual cultivation with someone. He was simply too otherworldly, truly making one unwilling to profane him. How is he not associated? Su Rufeng raised an eyebrow. You've all seen the palace lord's methods before. Which of those men didn't submit to the palace lord's sway? It's just. How long do you think the palace lord's interest will last this time? Well, In Huan pondered. Lord Chu Xiao was favored for barely 2 months back then. Lord Cheng Yu, perhaps he can last 3 months. What are you talking about? Chu Xiao wasn't on the same level as Lord Cheng Yu. Chi Su retorted without hesitation. She'll have to play with him for at least 3 to 5 years. Su Rufeng smiled. 3 to 5 years is a bit exaggerated. Our palace lord is famously fickle. Once the novelty wears off, she loses interest. Wu Shixin sighed. Thinking about it that way, Lord Cheng Yu is quite pitiable. For a respected immortal to be abandoned by the palace lord after she tires of him, that would be truly awful. Boom! Suddenly, a large tree not far from them split into 4 with a bang, startling them. They all stood up, glaring angrily at the newcomer. Cheng Yi, what madness are you up to now? Chi Su lost her patience. Lately, Cheng Yi would cast spells erratically, wearing an expressionless handsome face, listening to no one's orders. He had caused countless damage, and all that was Chongshan Hall's money. The young man, clad in dark black robes, looked handsome and heroic, standing rigidly not far away, with no intention of answering her. Chi Su was still fuming and about to say more, but Wu Shi pulled her back, whispering, "Ah Su, forget it. Let's go. Why should we be the ones to leave?" In Huan, however, simply waved her hand and left. "Oh, come on, let's go. The palace lord isn't here, and I don't want to provoke this lunatic." Su Rufeng quickly followed. Chi had been severely agitated lately, lashing out at everyone. It was best for them to keep their distance. Soon after, the graceful figures present vanished completely. The young man, without a word, slowly walked forward, gazing at the distant peak of Mount Wu, which seemed cloaked in clouds and rain. His hands gradually clenched into fists. After a long silence, he uncurled his fingers again, lowered his somber eyes, and turned to leave. At the summit of Mount Wu, inside the golden cage, the lingering afterglow of their passion remained. Chi Huan lay languidly on the bed, coiled around the man beside her like a snake, giggling playfully. You, I never expected you, who usually appears as cold as ice, to be so potent when it truly comes to it. Truly gifted. Her slender, jade-like fingers gently stroked his rising and falling chest. Further up was a face with tightly closed eyes. His wrists were currently bound behind him to the golden cage, his dark hair disheveled, and a faint lingering flush on his cheeks, presenting a ravaged, world-weary look. Chi Huan gazed at his face infatuatedly. Even at this point, she still had the illusion that she never truly possessed him. His aura was simply too grand after all. Even now, whenever she recalled his pristine white robes and icy gaze from their first meeting, it was still as captivating as a dream. He was destined to be her white moonlight, like an unattainable bright moon, pure, solitary, and not entirely real. Thinking this, Chi Huan couldn't help but move closer to him again, wrapping her arms tightly around his waist and murmuring a sweet confession to herself. You, I love you so much. As she spoke, she couldn't help but lick his thin lips, cautiously, as if stealing a forbidden taste, and instantly found it incredibly delicious. The man's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly, then smoothed away just as quickly. His eyes remained closed, his face expressionless. Chi Huan hummed disappointedly, then rolled around on him until she found a suitable angle, burying her face in the crook of his neck and boldly inhaling his faint fragrance. You, my back is so sore. Next time, could you be a little more proactive? Chi Huan mumbled aggrievedly. For the past month, she had been the one maintaining the passion. Although she aroused him to a burning intensity every time, he would remain utterly unmoved. Even when he was hot as fire, his eyes would be so deeply cold and somber, as if filled with endless hatred, or as if suppressing something profound. No matter how much she seduced him, he could remain stubbornly indifferent, forcing her to do all the work herself. If not for the real physical sensation, she would have almost believed it was all just her imagination. Such terrifying self-control. You're already mine anyway, so why pretend to be reserved? You're always uncooperative, and it makes me very tired. Aren't you afraid of holding it in and hurting yourself? If you don't feel bad for yourself, I do. Chi Huan mumbled to herself for a long time, receiving not a single response. She pouted irritably, then secretly leaned close to his ear and gently bit his sensitive earlobe. Sure enough, Cheng Yu's breathing deepened slightly. Chi Huan became smug and pressed on. She loved him most in this state, stifled unbearable gasps in his throat, making her whole body feel soft and yielding with desire. Only at such times could Chi Huan ignore his cold, icy eyes and truly feel a trace of satisfaction. Water. The man merely tilted his head to the side and hoarsely uttered a single word. Chi Huan was startled at first, then said happily, You want water? I'll go get it for you right now. With that, she sprang out of bed and, with a quick patter, brought over a wine pot. I don't have water ready. This is drunken flower nectar brewed from morning dew. Let me feed you some. After introducing it, Chi Huan completely ignored his implied refusal, took a mouthful herself, then lowered her head and fed him mouth to mouth. Cheng Yu instinctively turned his head to evade, but she forcefully twisted his face back. After a persistent struggle, she finally fed him the fine wine. Chi Huan eyed his slightly parted, crimson lips, immediately felt an unbearable itch, and began to tease him in various ways, intending to commit improper acts. How about we try something a little different? Chi Huan smiled as she wiped his thin lips, thinking of a more exciting game to play. Before, she had focused solely on forcing him. Now, it was time to attack his heart. More than brute possession, she now wanted to see him lose control of his emotions, fall from his pedestal, and no longer be able to maintain that aloof mask. She wanted him to belong to her completely, from body to soul, with no escape. No sooner said than done, Chi Huan began diligently, activating the jade maiden skill. Inside the cage, red candles flickered, and the scene was just right. Outside the cage, the long night stretched on, seemingly endless. It has been 3 months since the day Chi Huan settled the peace treaty. The Immortal sect has sent envoys multiple times, claiming the contract was due and requesting the joyful Harmony Palace to honor its promise and return their honored immortal Cheng Yu. However, how could the joyful Harmony Palace possibly entertain such a naive demand? Their palace lord hasn't even left Mount Wu yet. To ask for the person back? It's simply a colossal joke. Due to the joyful Harmony Palace repeatedly feigning ignorance, the Mystic Gate this time dispatched honored immortal's senior disciple, Song Xiang. The moment Song Xiang entered, he saw a room full of flamboyantly dressed women. They sat on high chairs, covering their mouths and laughing as they watched him. "Oh, isn't this the legendary son of Pure Yang? What brings you to visit our joyful Harmony Palace?" Song Xiang's expression faltered. He took out a peace treaty and, with righteous indignation, declared, "Your palace lord and our sect had an agreement long ago. Now that 3 months have passed, we hope your palace lord will return my master as per the agreement." Chi Su let out a cold scoff, about to shatter the contract on the spot. Fortunately, Song Xiang reacted swiftly, twirling around and retreating slightly. Is this the joyful Harmony Palace's way of treating guests? Song Xiang's sword-like brows furrowed deeply. He didn't know how his master was doing now. Rumors said his master had been tragically defiled by the demoness. If Chi Huan truly broke her word like that, then his master... Song Xiang dared not think further, feeling cold sweat all over, filled with both resentment and shame. What kind of guest are you? After consuming so many spirit stones and spirit beasts from our joyful Harmony Palace, you still have a nerve to come here demanding someone back. Chi Su had long been displeased about giving spirit stones to the immortal sect. The joyful Harmony Palace's money didn't just grow on trees. If you know what's good for you, hurry up and get out. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. "Ah Su, don't be so rude." Yin Huan's eyes smiled coquettishly. If older brother doesn't want to leave, staying to play with us sisters would also be wonderful. After all, these days, a pure yang body is quite rare. Little Inzi speaks wisely. Come to think of it, this one hasn't tasted the flavor of a pure yang sun yet. The women exchanged teasing remarks, one after another, until Song Xiang's handsome face turned scarlet. Unwilling to stay any longer, he turned angrily and vanished in the blink of an eye. Chi Su watched the disappearing figure and snorted dismissively. "Humph, he runs quite fast, but he's far inferior to honored Lord Cheng Yu." Su Ruffing raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. "Do you think just anyone can be compared to someone like honored Lord Cheng Yu?" Yin Huan's eye narrowed her eyes slightly. "I've noticed you two are truly staunch supporters of that honored immortal Cheng Yu. By the way, is he really that good-looking?" Su Ruffing said calmly, "Exquisitely beautiful beyond compare." Yin Huan's eye looked skeptical. "More beautiful than Chu Xiao." Chi Su held up a finger. 10,000 times more beautiful, at least. Yin Huan's eyes gaze quietly shifted to Wu Shixin nearby. She saw Wu Shixin clear her throat twice and say, "Little Inzi, honored Lord Cheng Yu's elegance is truly beyond words. You'll understand once you've seen him." Her words only made Yin Huan's eye even more curious, feeling as if she had missed out on fortune. Inside the golden cage, Chi Huan, like a demonic woman who devoured souls, lay contentedly in Cheng Yu's arms, a satisfied look on her face. The Jade Maiden cultivation method was extremely effective. Chi Huan was utterly satisfied and couldn't resist provoking the person beside her with words. "Yu, we've been working hard for so long. Do you think you'll have little ones? Will you give me a litter of little ones in the future, okay?" According to the laws of the world, men giving birth was unheard of, but Chi Huan refused to believe such an evil. She simply didn't want to have children. Giving birth was too painful, and she absolutely wouldn't do it. For this very reason, she had cut ties with her own mother for over 50 years, vowing that if there were no good little ones, mother and daughter would have nothing to do with each other for the rest of their lives. Left with no choice, Chi Huan could only diligently cultivate the Jade Maiden method, because its highest level possessed the miraculous effect of reversing yin and yang, allowing men to give birth. Though it had never been realized all these years. But for some reason, she vaguely felt that Cheng Yu was different from everyone else. Even the highest level of the cultivation method, which had been difficult to break through in the past, no longer seemed so out of reach. Unlike her, Cheng Yu seemed to be in a sunless hell. These past few months, she had tormented him day and night, crushing his pride, destroying his spirit, resorting to any means to achieve her goals. And he had never imagined his will could be so fragile, struggling bitterly between illusion and reality, letting her coax him until he succumbed to her wishes. Sigh. With a sigh, Chi Huan stopped teasing. She actually sat up, slowly and deliberately straightening her clothes. Cheng Yu let out a silent, soft gasp. His complexion had long since changed from a faint blush to an unfathomable, deep coldness. With a whoosh, the ropes binding his wrists completely vanished. The woman who had just been intimate with him simply waved her hand and tossed Wuchen back to him. Put it on, honored Lord Cheng Yu. Cheng Yu suddenly raised an eyebrow, his forehead twitching slightly. The flickering candlelight failed to penetrate the depths of his dark eyes. Chi Huan had already dressed. Looking at his expressionless face, she couldn't help but curve her lips into a seductive smile. Why are you looking at me like that? This palace lord is a woman of her word. The 3-month period is over, and I have decided to release honored Lord Cheng Yu back to the Immortal sect. Honored Lord Cheng Yu can rest assured. We'll go bathe in the hot springs first, and then this palace lord will personally escort you home. As for Chi Huan personally, she naturally hated to let Cheng Yu go. But she was always one to tire of the old and embrace the new. After being with Cheng Yu for several months straight, no matter how much she liked him, she had grown tired of him. Indeed, her interest in men never lasted beyond 3 months. Not even her cherished white moonlight was an exception. Moreover, she genuinely felt a little sorry for Cheng Yu. Although she showed no mercy when training him on normal days, whenever she saw his ash-like eyes, she felt an inexplicable sense of guilt, as if she had been cursed. Oh well, since he had resolved her long-standing obsession, she might as well keep her promise for once and set him free. And so, a certain person, ignoring the objections of all the sisters in the joyful Harmony Palace, confidently escorted him outside the mystic gate and said with emotion, Honored Lord Cheng Yu, this palace lord has returned your master. This time, I returned him intact to Zhao. Rest assured, after today's farewell, you and I will never meet again. At that moment, the mountain wind bitingly swept past his long brows and cold eyes, causing his dark hair and white sash to dance in the wind. He seemed like a banished immortal descending to the world, ready to ride the wind away in the next instant. Chi Huan squinted as she looked ahead, a thump in her heart. Honored Immortal Cheng Yu was truly an immortal and truly beautiful. To be honest, at this very moment, she was already regretting it a little. However, words once spoken are like spilled water. Chi Huan could only bite the bullet and wave her hand. Fine, fine. Who asked this palace lord to be so kind? The transaction is over. You may go. A momentary murderous resentment flashed across Cheng Yu's face. He remained silent, lifting his eyes to give her a deep glare, then suddenly soared into the air. In an instant, his wide sleeves billowed like clouds, his figure becoming even more ethereal. Chi Huan watched his disappearing figure all the way, her mood growing increasingly disheartened, her regret deepening further. Only after a long while did she awkwardly retract her neck. Never mind, let's just consider it accumulating good karma. Joyful Harmony Hall. Chi Huan slumped dejectedly on the long couch, listening with a headache to the clamor below. Palace Lord, you were too muddled. How could you let honored Lord Cheng Yu go back? Exactly, Palace Lord. Even if you truly tired of him, keeping him in the palace for eye candy would still be wonderful. It's not like we're short on money. Chi Su exclaimed, heartbroken. In Huan's eye, leaning against a pillar nearby, shot them a rather disdainful look and said casually, What nonsense. In my opinion, instead of letting a tiger return to the mountains, the palace lord should have just finished him off with one strike. Eradicating the root is the best strategy. Su Ruffing immediately frowned and retorted, Honored Lord Cheng Yu failed his tribulation, so he already lost his cultivation. He's no threat to us at all. Is it really necessary to eradicate the root? Little Inzi, you're truly a bit ruthless. In Huan's eye snorted, ignoring her, and looked directly up, saying, Palace Lord, your subordinate still suggests eradicating the root. After all, he was once the leader of the Immortal Alliance. Even if he failed his tribulation, it doesn't mean he can't make a comeback in the future. We've already formed a blood feud with him this time, give a rest. I've never seen anyone who failed their tribulation yet managed to make a comeback. Palace Lord, don't listen to her. The chattering below was endless, making Chi Huan's headache even worse. Today marked exactly 30 days since honored Lord Cheng Yu was released. To be honest, she regretted it more with each passing day, her insides churning with regret. So much so that she at one point felt she must have been cursed back then to make such an idiotic decision, one that clearly hadn't involved any thought. Only now did she realize that Cheng Yu had successfully raised her standards all by himself, making everyone else seem utterly dull and uninteresting. Heavens, where could she possibly find another man to compare with him? If she were given another chance, she would never grow tired of eating meat every day. Even if she did get tired, she would keep it by her side, instead of now, where she could only try to recall the taste of meat through memories. The more she remembered, the more fragrant it seemed. Her cravings were so strong they could make a child cry. As Chi Huan thought of this, she suddenly sprang to her feet, ignoring the astonished crowd. She directly cast a spell and quickly arrived at a residence in Dream City. Antly was busy selecting male companions when she suddenly saw the palace lord descend from the sky. Startled, she hurried forward to pay her respects. "Palace lord, what brings you here? Is there something important?" Chi Huan flicked her sleeve and walked inside. "Are there any newcomers recently?" Yes. Antly was well informed, having already learned of the palace lord releasing honored Lord Cheng Yu. She had specifically selected several batches of handsome young men, ready for the palace lord's amusement at any time. Antly respectfully invited Chi Huan to the main seat, then began to call people in. She understood the palace lord's thoughts best, and the young men she selected were all top-notch. However, an incensed time passed. Chi Huan looked at one after another, but her brows furrowed deeper and deeper, until she finally couldn't help but speak. "Antly, your taste is getting worse and worse. What are all these ugly specimens? Look at them, dressed in funerary robes. Are they trying to imitate She's sure in her sickness?" Antly was silent for a moment, a little aggrieved. "Palace lord, your subordinate selected them all according to your preferences." Chi Huan made a pained face. "Fine, it was her problem. Having seen the vast ocean, other waters are not worth seeing. Having seen the clouds of Mount Wu, other clouds are not worth seeing. Now, this was great. She couldn't even find a substitute." Chi Huan sighed deeply and casually pointed to a man. "And then, come back to the palace with me." The entire Mystic Gate had been abuzz with discussions lately. No one knew who leaked the news, but the Honored One had actually returned without anyone knowing. One should know that previously, they had sent disciples to the Joyful Harmony Palace multiple times for negotiations, only to be humiliated by the palace, which clearly had no intention of honoring the contract. This also led to internal divisions within the sect. One faction advocated raising an army to bring back the Honored One, while more people remained silent, essentially acquiescing to the Joyful Harmony Palace's actions. After all, clashing head-on with the Joyful Harmony Palace at such a time would be akin to hitting a rock with an egg. They had thought the matter was over, but unexpectedly, the Honored One had returned on his own. Now, the Honored Immortal's mansion on the peak had become a forbidden area, inaccessible to anyone. If it weren't for Song Xiang, the Honored One's senior disciple, noticing something unusual earlier, most of them wouldn't even know the Honored One had returned. However, even if the Honored One had escaped, it might be too late. Many sighed regretfully, some even feeling a bit of schadenfreude. What if he was a genius rarely seen in 1,000 years? In the end, wasn't his cultivation still utterly destroyed, reduced to being defiled by a demoness? If the Honored One had lost his pure yang and could no longer cultivate the path of heartlessness in the future, then there truly would be no hope of recovery. Unlike the clamor outside, the Honored Immortal's mansion was extremely quiet at this moment. No one was allowed to approach within a 5-mile radius. Inside the mansion, the man sitting cross-legged on the jade stone was covered in what seemed like a layer of bloody mist. A faint demigod mark flickered on his forehead as he desperately made his final struggle. Cheng Yu didn't know how many times he had been beaten back by the demonic influence, but there was indeed another power within him. Even if he detested it, he had to admit that during those days of boundless entanglement with her, his almost dry cultivation suddenly soared, like rain after a long drought, rapidly recovering and flourishing in a very short time. In fact, he had had the chance to break free from the ropes several days ago, and with a desperate gamble, he might have been able to fight back. Yet he indulged in idleness as if possessed, almost deluding himself into blocking all his escape routes. However, he clearly hated that humiliating violation with a passion, and even more so, he hated how she discarded him like an old shoe in the name of keeping a promise after having him. He wished he could tear her into 10,000 pieces and make her accompany his immortal path in burial. Ugh! Suddenly, a surge of burning rage attacked his heart. Cheng Yu's brows furrowed tightly, his face growing even paler. He abruptly discovered two almost imperceptible strange forces hidden within him, which were. Cheng Yu's eyes snapped open. It was life. Chi Huan, she actually dared. He could barely restrain himself from recalling those utterly absurd days and nights, unable even to distinguish between pleasure and pain and the desire buried beneath the humiliation. Bastards! He would absolutely not allow such abominations to remain. In an instant, immense spiritual power burst forth, surging majestically, soaring straight into the clouds, affecting mountains and fields alike. Even the people at the foot of the mountain were shaken. But people saw, clearly, that spiritual power was neither immortal nor demonic. Rather, it seemed to be a combination of two forces swiftly fading away in a flash. "Senior brother, quick! Gather the elders and go to the Honored Immortal's mansion. That is the power of gods and demons. When gods and demons appear, great disaster is sure to follow. The entire Mystic Gate quickly descended into chaos. Meanwhile, the joyful Harmony Palace was filled with singing and dancing. To alleviate her increasingly gloomy mood, Chi Huan hosted a banquet in the joyful Harmony Hall, complaining to Wu Shi while simultaneously disdaining her newly acquired male companion. "Ah, Shi, why didn't you stop me back then?" Wu Shi looked speechless. "Who didn't try to stop you back then? Could he have stopped you? Look at you now. See if you'll still be so wild in the future." "Wu, you're still mocking me. All right then, may I ask Palace Lord Chi Huan how you feel about yourself?" Chi Huan, with one arm around her new favorite and the other holding a wine pot, replied, "Don't ask. If you ask, the answer is regret." Wu Shi sighed. "All right, just bear with it for a bit. Once this period is over, everything will be fine. Didn't she know her well enough? Anyway, it was already hers once. Once the after effects passed, she'd eat, drink, and it wouldn't affect her search for new favorites in the slightest." Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, several startling claps of thunder roared, and the sky above the joyful Harmony Palace rapidly changed. Outside, it became a clamorous mess. Wu Shi stood up at the sound, finding it somewhat strange. "Palace Lord, I'll go outside and take a look." Chi Huan waved her hand dismissively. "Go ahead." She wasn't in the mood for anything right now. Palace matters could just be handled by Shi and Yi. However, the next moment, the entire joyful Harmony Hall began to tremble. The dancers and musicians below stumbled and fell, bewildered and panicked. Before Chi Huan could react, a dazzling bright light flashed, and her palace actually split into two. "Damn it! Who dares to demolish this palace lord's house?" Chi Huan, disregarding her disheveled appearance, began to curse loudly. No sooner had she spoken than a sharp sword chi whistled towards her. White robes fluttered in the biting wind, and under the sunlight, he appeared like a celestial being. "You." Chi Huan was first overjoyed, then startled. When she saw her new favorite decapitated in an instant, she was utterly stunned, her smile completely frozen on her face. It was over. This stance clearly meant he was here for revenge. How did he suddenly become so powerful? Chi Huan carefully avoided his sword tip, maintaining a stiff smile at the corner of her mouth. "Ho, honored one, let's talk this over properly." She thought a battle was imminent between them, but she saw his knuckles clench the sword hilt, his thin lips parting and closing as he coldly uttered 4 words. "I am pregnant." "Congratulations." "Yours." "Impossible. I'm still a baby myself." He gazed at her, without changing expression, the sharp tip of his sword pressed against her throat, enunciating each word. "This honored one said, this honored one is carrying your child. Do you not understand?" The others in the hall had long since fled, leaving behind a few tattered pieces of wood, which did nothing to diminish the murderous atmosphere. Chi Huan swallowed, not daring to move, carefully clutching the silver sword already pressed against her throat. She offered a placating smile and quickly said, Understood, understood. I hear you. You look, we have children now. Why don't we sit down and talk slowly? Wielding weapons isn't good for the little ones." However, the sharp sword instantly pointed at her glabella, followed by the man's voice, cold as jade. "Do you think this venerable one would keep these abominations?" "Do." Chi Huan blinked her peachy eyes, not yet recovered from the shock of unexpectedly becoming a mother, when this news stunned her even further. Was the Jade Maiden divine skill so potent that it resulted in twins? Why hadn't there been any sign before? But more than this surprise, Chi Huan felt she should be more concerned about her own life. Even without a move, she could feel the oppressive aura, even more so than when they first met. This was clearly not the state he was in when his cultivation had plummeted. She wondered what had happened these past few days. Had he perhaps achieved enlightenment after breaking free from the path of ruthlessness? Thinking of this, Chi Huan tentatively said, Your Reverence, if you don't want the children, then don't. I won't force you." She didn't have any strong desire for children. If it weren't for her mother wanting a grandchild, she wouldn't bother. How free and happy she was alone. Little brats were noisy and troublesome. Just thinking about it gave her a headache. But unexpectedly, no sooner had she spoken than the sword point drew a fraction closer, emanating a chilling gleam against her forehead. "Use the Jade Maiden divine skill to transfer the children into your body," he said after a long pause. Chi Huan's eyes widened instantly. She leaped back a great distance like a monkey. "Don't even think about it. Can children just be casually transferred? Your Reverence, you're going too far." Cheng Yu glared, his brow furrowed, his thin brown lips moving slightly. "Don't make this venerable one say it a second time." As soon as he spoke, the little ones in her belly seemed to sense their parents' disdain, trembling slightly, which made Cheng Yu's refined brows subtly furrow, and even the chill from his long sword dissipated a bit. Chi Huan, quick-witted and sharp-eyed, caught his subtle reaction. She darted over, and seizing his moment of slack, wrapped her arms around his slender waist, clinging to him like a burr, and joked. Yu, I really can't transfer the children. Look, since things have come to this, why don't we just make do together? I'll treat you and the babies well. Cheng Yu barely resisted the almost dizzying sensation and reached out to grip her neck, a vein throbbing faintly on his temple. You deserve to die. Cough, cough, cough. Chi Huan coughed several times, choked, but her keen intuition told her that Cheng Yu would compromise for the children and wouldn't kill her. Otherwise, why would he waste so much time talking to her? He would have acted long ago. Sure enough, just as she was about to give out, the pressure on her throat suddenly loosened. Chi Huan let out a wah, and agilely broke free from his hand, then clung to him like an octopus, wailing. Oh, Yu, it was all my fault before. I shouldn't have treated you like that. I'm a scoundrel. From now on, I'll listen to everything you say. Please spare me for the baby's sake. Cheng Yu's expression remained unchanged, his long fingers slowly tightening as he pinched her pitiful, pleading face. You think you'll have it from now on? Chi Huan met his eyes, which resembled a cold pond, and quickly adopted an obedient posture. Yes, Yu. We've already bowed in the hall and gotten married. How can there be overnight grudges between husband and wife? Don't worry, I'll definitely give you and the babies the best in the future. The entire Huan Palace is yours. Cheng Yu's expression was extremely cold, devoid of any emotion as he delivered his verdict. Today, you and these abominations will both die. Chi Huan's entire face instantly puffed up. Yu, even a vicious tiger doesn't eat its cubs. And also, don't keep calling the babies abominations. They'll get angry. As if to echo her words, Cheng Yu's lips pursed, letting out a low grunt, clearly indicating the little ones were acting up again. Chi Huan looked at his slightly furrowed brow, marveling at his beauty, and quickly pressed her palm against his still slender waist, coaxing him gently. Don't worry, good babies, your dad was just kidding. He won't hurt you. After coaxing, she looked up at Cheng Yu again, her eyes sparkling. Yu, look how well-behaved the babies are. How can you bear to abandon them? Cheng Yu's long brows furrowed deeply. After an unknown amount of time, he finally lowered his gaze, swept his sleeve, and coldly pushed her away. Before Chi Huan could react, he drew his sword and turned, his white robes trailing like dancing clouds, suddenly disappearing into the light and shadow. Have someone announce to the world, 3 days from now, the grand wedding of Huan Palace. Over the next few days, news of the immortal venerable and the demon empress's impending marriage spread far and wide. For the first time, both the immortal and demonic sects were so unanimously shocked that their jaws dropped. They inquired everywhere if the news was true and eagerly prepared congratulatory gifts, planning to attend the grand wedding banquet at Huan Palace. While everyone clicked their tongues in wonder, countless melodramatic rumors emerged, such as, good and evil cannot coexist, but the immortal venerable and the demonic empress are caught in a love-hate struggle. The immortal venerable failed his tribulation and decided to rely on his looks to make a living. The demoness got pregnant, and the immortal venerable had no choice but to take responsibility, and so on. However, no matter what the outside world speculated, Chi Huan was so happy she smiled in her sleep. The beauty she had always regretted letting go was willing to return to her on his own, and even wanted to announce it to the world and marry her. She remembered that last time when she forcefully married him, he tried every possible way to escape. It was truly different with children. No matter how aloof and unwilling he was, for the sake of the babies, he had to compromise. After all, they were his own flesh and blood. How could he be so heartless? Alas, the only thing that bothered her was that with Cheng Yu's current strength, she couldn't suppress him at all. In the future, she probably wouldn't be able to tease him as she pleased. Chi Huan sighed with a slight regret, then suddenly heard gongs and drums from outside. Palace Master, the auspicious time is almost here. Please change into your clothes and come out. Wu Shi and the others stood outside, shouting loudly into the room. These past 3 days, all their sisters have been dispatched, busy inside and out, tidying up the entire Huan Palace. Except for the Huan Hall, which had been split in half by Cheng Yu, the other areas were as grand and festive as could be. Speaking of which, they had all thought there would be a fierce battle that day. After all, immortal venerable Cheng Yu had endured such long humiliation under their palace master, and now that his spiritual power was so strong, he would naturally seek revenge. They were jointly trying to break through the barrier to rush in and offer support, but who knew, just as they were about to act, the barrier automatically disappeared. Only the palace master was left inside, who then announced that Cheng Yu was pregnant with her child and ordered her to marry him in 3 days. Although this matter sounded incredibly absurd, even a little crazy, it did not hinder their enthusiasm for preparing the wedding for their palace master. They not only sent out numerous invitations, but also allocated a large sum of spirit stones, vowing to make the wedding banquet lively and grand, upholding the reputation of Huan Palace. Coming. Chi Huan let the maidservants help her into her wedding dress, then opened the door with a grin. I don't even know if Cheng Yu will come back. Why are you all so eager? She tidied her hair. Are we eager? The guests outside are almost breaking down the palace gates, all waiting to see you two get married. They're waiting to see me make a fool of myself, aren't they? Chi Huan hummed. If Cheng Yu didn't show up this time, she'd be utterly humiliated. Oh, why talk so much? The auspicious time is almost here, palace master. Let's go. In Huan took her arm and led her out. Thus, Chi Huan was soon escorted to the high platform, surrounded by continuous music and dancing, and endless feasting below. Chi Huan casually glanced around. Yo-ho, everyone's here. Both the immortal and demonic sects, those who should come and those who shouldn't, are eagerly joining the fun. Looks like everyone's gossipy nature is very strong. If Cheng Yu doesn't show up today, I'm afraid I won't be able to salvage the situation. But honestly, Chi Huan herself wasn't sure if Cheng Yu would actually come and get married. Although he was now carrying her children, her previous actions were indeed too vile. She had humiliated him, manipulated him, and generally committed all sorts of scoundrelly acts of forceful seizure. Now that the tables had turned, it was good enough if Cheng Yu didn't retaliate against her. The fact that he was even willing to bear her children and swallow his pride to marry her, Chi Huan had to admit she was quite touched. She had decided that even if Cheng Yu deliberately played a trick on her this time, she wouldn't get angry as long as he didn't seek revenge on her. The auspicious time has arrived. Why hasn't the groom come yet? Someone below impatiently asked. Exactly, another said. Why hasn't your reverence appeared? Could it be that your Huan Palace is just wishful thinking, attempting to encroach upon his reverence? That's right, this demoness has always been shameless. How could his reverence associate with her? Perhaps this wedding banquet is just a conspiracy. Who are you talking to? In Huan and her group couldn't stand it. They argued fiercely. Do you even qualify to criticize our Huan Palace? Huan Palace is inherently licentious and lawless. Why can't we criticize it? Say that again. Be careful. This hall master will whip you. Come on then. The crowd below instantly descended into chaos, but Chi Huan showed no intention of intervening. Instead, she ordered someone to bring a lounge chair and some fruit platters. She leisurely spat out melon seed shells, her face completely unbathed. Palace master, look at this. Do you really not need to do something? Wu Shi, seeing her nonchalant attitude, offered a rather helpless suggestion. Chi Huan swayed in her chair. Don't bother with them. Let them be. Just as long as they don't tear off my roof. Well, if the boss said so, what opinion could Wu Shi have? So the crowd below continued to quarrel, almost coming to blows, and the scene was once very chaotic. In contrast, Chi Huan drank wine and cracked melon seeds, her phoenix crown removed and tossed aside, not looking like a bride at all. Just as the arguments grew fiercer, suddenly the night sky shone brightly. A roll of white silk unfurled directly from afar, trailing all the way, accompanied by specks of starlight. Everyone was drawn to this sight, looking up at the path made of white silk, involuntarily holding their breath, eyes wide with anticipation. Before long, a figure slowly appeared at the end of the night, as if transformed from moonlight, walking unhurriedly on the white silk, each step covering 1,000 li, with lotuses blooming under his feet. Enveloped in holy light, he resembled a heavenly being. What an ethereal scene. Chi Huan spat out a mouthful of wine, didn't bother to wipe her mouth, quickly picked up the phoenix crown from the corner and put it on, preparing to fly up and meet the immortal on the silk bridge. You. Ouch. However, before she could even touch the silk, she was violently bounced back by a force, falling sprawling. Oh, my old back. Chi Huan clutched her waist and rolled twice, whimpering mournfully a few times, then quickly scrambled up and happily ran towards the person who had lightly landed. You're here? I thought you weren't coming. Cheng Yu glanced at her messy hair, indifferently looked away, and said coolly, let's begin. That entrance truly was stunning. Chi Huan was ecstatic, her eyes full of him, wishing she could immediately consummate the marriage with her beauty. Begin, let's begin now, she said, winking at the stunned Wu Shi and the others. The swanas and drums all chimed in, and the scene immediately grew lively again. First bow to heaven and earth, second bow to the esteemed parents. Husband and wife bow to each other, into the bridal chamber. On the high platform, the bride and groom, one in red and one in white, looked awkward no matter how one saw them. The guests below whispered amongst themselves, yet the venerable one, with an expressionless heavenly face, went through the entire ceremony with the demoness. Now he flicked his sleeve and headed for the inner palace. The Huan palace master, looking utterly infatuated, followed behind the venerable one, grinning like a flower, completely ignoring the departure of their guests. Senior brother, it seems master truly. Alas, let's go back. A young man in the crowd whispered. Song Xiang, whom he called senior brother, had his sword-like brows furrowed throughout, gazing in the direction his former master had left. After a long pause, he finally turned. Let's go back. Due to Huan Hall being split in half by Cheng Yu, Chi Huan set the bridal chamber on Mount Wu. Of course, the golden cage from before had been removed, and a small courtyard had been built in a very short time, adorned inside and out with double happiness, characters, and red silk, full of the mundane atmosphere of the mortal world. Yu, since we're in the bridal chamber, shouldn't we get down to business? Chi Huan's eyes sparkled, her two paws restlessly rubbing against him. She was itching with desire. Primarily, his entrance today had truly captivated her, making her feel utterly lightheaded. However, as she barely brushed the corner of his wide sleeve, the beauty coldly swept his gaze over her, turned, and gracefully sat on the bed. His waist was straight, sitting upright and solemnly. Kneel. Chi Huan was a little slow to react, pointing at herself with a bewildered face and asking, Me? Cheng Yu raised an eyebrow. Otherwise, although Chi Huan wanted to protest at this moment, when she felt the powerful pressure, she could only puff out her cheeks and reluctantly kneel, muttering under her breath. What did I do wrong? Seeking pleasure with wine, indulging in romance. You've been quite carefree these past 3 days, Cheng Yu said indifferently. Chi Huan blinked. She had indeed gone to the pleasure house for some fun the past 2 days, but the question was, how did he know? I was just drinking and chatting, absolutely no romance. Chi Huan quickly explained. Based on her experience, no matter how the other party found out, at such a moment, it was essential to firmly state her position. Cheng Yu sneered, not pursuing the matter further. He simply raised a finger to extinguish the red candle, drew the bed curtains, closed his eyes, and ignored her. Chi Huan knelt for a short while, then couldn't help but crane her neck to peek inside, her face full of anticipation. Yu, I've been kneeling for almost half an hour. Can I get on the bed now? She still wanted a beautiful wedding night. There was no response from behind the gauze curtains for a long time. Chi Huan rubbed her paws, then used both hands and feet, preparing to quietly crawl over, only to hear 2 extremely clear words from his thin lips. Kneel properly. She froze, her paws reluctantly retracting, and she couldn't help but quietly grumble. Where in the world does a bride kneel outside on her wedding night? You're going too far. I want to get on the bed too. I want to touch the little ones. While grumbling, she moved towards the bed. After lurking for a while, she finally let out an ow and jumped onto the bed, cleverly rolling beside him, heedlessly snuggling into his arms, her palm gently resting on his taut waist. Who told you to get on the bed? Cheng Yu's brows subtly furrowed, and he slowly opened his eyes, seeming somewhat displeased. Chi Huan giggled and rubbed against his neck. Yu, stop pretending. If you really didn't want me on the bed, you would have set up a barrier long ago. How would you allow me to be so brazen? Well, Yu, I missed you so much these past few days. Yeah, really? Of course. You don't know how much I regretted letting you go. None of those vulgar beauties outside are as beautiful as you. Before she could finish her rambling, she was suddenly propelled straight out of the curtains by a force, involuntarily kneeling perfectly upright, in an incredibly standard posture. Yu, what are you doing? Chi Huan was surprised to find herself unable to move, but maintaining this kneeling posture was so tiring. Yu, why did you suddenly turn hostile? Wasn't I just praising you? However, this time, no matter how much she protested, there was no sound from behind the curtains. Finally, unable to do anything, she could only begin to console herself. All right, seeing as you're pregnant, what's wrong with me giving in a little oomph? Kneeling to heaven, kneeling to earth, kneeling to my wife. Anyway, I'm not a loss. The next morning, when Wuxi arrived at the small wooden house on the mountaintop, Chi Huan was sprawled on the ground, sleeping soundly. Her hands and feet were tucked together like paws, half her face pressed directly against the floor. Who knew what she was dreaming? But her mouth kept smacking and pouting, making Wuxi frown. Palace Master, wake up! Wuxi squatted down and shook her head. Chi Huan turned over, hands and feet together, and let out an impatient ow. I'm dreaming, don't disturb me. Wuxi gritted her teeth, pinched her nose, and shouted loudly. Palace Master, if you don't get up soon, Huan Palace will be taken over. As soon as these words fell, the person who was just dreaming suddenly opened her eyes, sat up from the ground with a murderous aura. Who dares to take my palace? Wuxi, seeing that she was finally awake, quickly blurted out everything that had happened down the mountain. It turned out that early this morning, Cheng Yu went to Huan Hall and summoned the 2 great protectors and 4 hall masters to the dilapidated hall. Except for Qin Yi, whose palace gate remained tightly shut, refusing to show face. Everyone else eagerly went to join the commotion. After all, who doesn't love to look at a handsome man? They initially thought the righteous consort merely wanted to get acquainted, but once they arrived, they realized he had no intention of interacting with them. He had called them there only to demand that they hand over their respective halls' command tokens and account books. It was important to know that the command tokens were symbols of power in Huan Palace. Hall masters used them to deploy internal resources. The account books, on the other hand, were top secret within Huan Palace. Even Chi Huan only checked them once a month and never interfered excessively. But now, Cheng Yu was asking them to hand over both items, clearly aiming to seize power. The few of them immediately became wary. Although they loved to look at handsome men, it didn't mean they would betray their principles for beauty. So they decisively rejected this unreasonable demand. However, they never expected that the other party wouldn't even try to persuade them. He directly swished out several white silk ribbons, binding their hands and feet like octopuses, and threw them into a corner by a pillar. Then he ignored them, no matter how they wailed. He simply looked down at his book as if nothing had happened, quiet as a watercolor painting. Fortunately, Wuxi was prudent. As soon as she saw the situation turn, she quickly escaped before Cheng Yu made his move and rushed straight to the bridal chamber on the mountain. So, Palace Master, hurry and go see. If you don't deal with it, something big will happen. Chi Huan sprang directly from the ground after hearing this. That's truly outrageous. Come, follow me to see. Without delay, Wuxi quickly pulled up her skirt and followed. But halfway, she suddenly remembered something and looked back, then asked with a hint of curiosity. Palace Master, did you sleep on the ground last night? Chi Huan's knees instantly tensed, and she retorted with bulging eyes. Who said that? Then you. Wuxi pointed to the spot where she had been lying, her meaning clear. Chi Huan impatiently snorted. Can't I roll off by myself in the middle of the night? Oh, hurry up, why so much nonsense? The 2 rushed to Huan Hall, frantic. As soon as they entered, they saw Chi Su and the others bound and thrown aside. Seeing her, they cried out as if she were their savior. Palace Master, you're finally here. Boss, please save us. Palace Master, seeing her sisters being so humiliated on their own territory, Chi Huan's brow furrowed. She indignantly exclaimed, This is preposterous, then waved her bare hand, intending to free them from the white silk bonds. However, a quarter of an hour passed, and the white silk remained unmoved. The 6 stared at each other, the scene momentarily awkward. Finally, Yin Huan regained her senses and, wriggling her tightly bound body, timidly questioned, Boss, are you capable of this? Of course I am. Chi Huan yelled like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, then felt her reaction was too extreme and glared fiercely at Yin Huan. You just stay put. After that, she ignored them, turned, and strode towards where Cheng Yu was sitting, not forgetting to set up a barrier around them. Cheng Yu. Chi Huan bounced a few steps to his side, righteously questioning, Why are you binding my subordinates? Those who refuse to obey naturally need a lesson. Cheng Yu's long, slender fingers pressed against her approaching forehead. He put down his book and turned his head to glance at her. You are no exception. Chi Huan's temper flared instantly. Her cheeks puffed up, and she drew her weapon, slashing at him. Thus, inside the barrier, there was a flurry of clanging and fighting, which finally ended with someone falling sprawling on the ground. Oh, Yu, I was wrong. Chi Huan admitted her mistake almost instantly. She cautiously pushed away the cold sword pointed at her, scrambled up, found an opportunity, and hugged him. Yu, in front of my subordinates, can't you give me some face? Cheng Yu directly lifted her away, his expression unchanged. He merely looked down at her. So, the command tokens and account books, are you giving them to me or not? Chi Huan put on a wrong face and whined softly. Why are you suddenly so interested in Huan Palace? Are you trying to take over my property? Take over your property? Cheng Yu raised an eyebrow, his tone full of sarcasm. Isn't this the territory I conquered for this venerable one? Chi Huan choked. She vaguely remembered making such grandiose statements. But wasn't that to please the beauty? How could she have foreseen this day? Yu, Huan Palace isn't just mine. I'm merely managing it on its behalf. Seeing the growing chill in his eyes, Chi Huan's voice grew softer and softer. Suddenly, her eyes darted around, and she looked up, saying, How about this? The command tokens remain with them. But you can review the account books of each hall at any time. How does that sound? Cheng Yu indifferently looked away, retracted all the white silk, and then directly removed the barrier Chi Huan had set up. He walked away with his hands behind his back. So be it. Several days passed. Cheng Yu quickly reviewed Huan Palace's accounts, gaining a thorough understanding of the vast organization's operational structure. The various hall masters below, with the exception of Cheng Yu who had not shown up, were almost all under Cheng Yu's control. Just when everyone thought Cheng Yu would now seize power to retaliate against Chi Huan, he did nothing of the sort. On the contrary, Chi Huan remained the palace master. All major and minor decisions of Huan Palace still required her stamp of approval, but the actual administrative power had shifted from the individual hall masters to Cheng Yu. Now, whenever immortal venerable Cheng Yu was mentioned in Huan Palace, everyone felt awe. Even Chi Su and her sisters were trembling. Originally, if the palace master had led them in a fight to the death with Cheng Yu, they wouldn't have been afraid. Good sisters would live and die together. But the problem was, the palace master had agreed to Cheng Yu reviewing the accounts. Although they hadn't done anything major to betray the sect or harm anyone, they had certainly embezzled funds. Not a single one could escape. Especially Chi Su, whose commerce hall managed all the business dealings of Huan Palace, handling a large amount of money daily. Over time, the amount she had pocketed even startled Chi Huan. All right, you all. You eat my food, live in my palace, use my things, and you still dare to embezzle my money? Are you trying to rebel? In the grand hall, Chi Su, Wu Shixin, Su Rufeng, In Huan, and the other four stood in a row, heads bowed, undergoing interrogation. Especially you, Chi Su. Chi Huan singled her out. Embezzling a little money is one thing, but you embezzled enough to buy an entire city. What do you want to do? Do you want to raise a city of pretty boys and declare yourself queen on the spot? Does my Huan Palace lack male companions for you? Every year there are so many pleasure slaves. Isn't it always that you pick after I've picked? And you still cause so much trouble. Chi Huan was indignantly scolding when she heard a pa, and the sound of a chopping board being struck suddenly came from behind. She immediately shut up, turned around with a grin, and eagerly bounced over to Cheng Yu, who was sitting and reading bamboo slips. She intimately hugged his arm. You, luckily you have sharp eyes. Not one of these guys is honest. From now on, you'll be responsible for supervising them and see if they still dare to embezzle indiscriminately. After hearing Chi Huan's words, the four below wailed inwardly. Was Cheng Yu sent to torment them? He had cleared up years of accounts in less than a month. With such powerful divine sense, if he were to check the accounts daily from now on, would they even have a way to live? Sisters, what should we do? Chi Su remembered to start transmitting her voice secretly. In Huan rolled her eyes. What else can we do? For now on, just pray for yourselves. Master! Before they could finish, a small boy in a golden short jacket suddenly rushed in from outside, his voice even tinged with tears. Master, why are you chasing us away? Chi Huan hadn't understood what was happening yet when the boy cried and ran to her, tugging at her sleeve and tearfully pleading. Master, please don't chase us away. My brothers and I will all be very obedient. Chi Huan looked bewildered. Xiaomi, I'm not chasing you away. The boy suddenly stopped crying. Then why did Sister Wu tell us to go down the mountain and find our own way after giving us spirit stones? Just then, Wu Shi hurried in, instinctively bowing as she explained. Palace Master, your subordinate was ordered by the righteous consort to disband the pleasure house. However, among those in the pleasure house... No, wait. Whose order did you take? Wu Shi paused, then repeated clearly. The righteous consort's order. Righteous. Chi Huan had just followed along with one word when she suddenly realized, turning to glare at the man who hadn't spoken a word until now. It was you. You, what is the meaning of this? Chi Huan fumed. Cheng Yu's brows slightly furrowed, and his slender fingers lightly closed the bamboo slip. Chi Huan blinked, feeling that his every movement was incredibly elegant, his posture extremely dignified, creating his own aura, completely different from her own crooked and sprawling posture. Do you think this venerable one would keep your concubines? Cheng Yu slightly raised an eyebrow, his voice as clear and shallow as flowing water, glancing sideways at the person who was righteously questioning him. Chi Huan choked slightly, then forcibly retorted. Who said they were concubines? I don't go there often. It's just a place for amusement. Xiaomi, who had been sniffling nearby, seemed to catch on. His small face turned, and he looked eagerly at Cheng Yu. Brother Yu, are you the one chasing us away? Cheng Yu's long eyelashes drooped slightly. He wrote a document and handed it to Xiaomi. Go find a respectable sect to study in. You are still young and should not waste your time here. How is Huan Palace not a respectable sect? Chi Huan muttered softly. Xiaomi took the document with both hands and stammered. But the brothers also said they want to learn from Brother Yu and serve Master together. Upon hearing this, Cheng Yu's peripheral vision suddenly shot towards Chi Huan, a faint, almost smile on his lips. It seems the Palace Master is quite the fortune with beauties. Chi Huan's knees suddenly twitched. She quickly grinned broadly. No, I'll disband them. Isn't that enough? At night, Chi Huan hid under the covers, eagerly waiting for Cheng Yu to bathe and change. As soon as he drew the curtain, she eagerly hugged him, rubbing against him, kissing and sniffing him, mumbling, "Oh, will you smell so good." Cheng Yu directly lifted her away, his face regal and aloof. "Who told you to get on the bed?" Upon hearing this, Chi Huan hung her head, looking very wronged. Yu, I've been sleeping on the cold floor for a month. If this continues, I'll really become a silly tiger. You can't abuse a tiger cub like this. Cheng Yu slightly raised an eyebrow. What does your sleeping on the floor have to do with whether you're silly or not? Of course it does. The floor is so cold and hard. If you sleep on it for too long, you'll get silly, Chi Huan argued forcefully. His long, slender fingertips slowly pinched her cheeks. But you weren't very smart to begin with. Chi Huan didn't care about her pinched cheeks. She just tightly hugged his waist, refusing to let go. I don't care. Anyway, I'm sleeping with you tonight, and I'll sleep with you every night from now on. Besides, the babies need their mommy's company too. Cheng Yu's hand on her waist suddenly tightened, his eyes as deep and cold as a pond. You still have a nerve to mention the children. Today, when you disbanded the pleasure house, I suppose you were deeply reluctant, weren't you? Chi Huan shook her head firmly, her face not flushing, her heart not skipping a beat as she stated her position. Absolutely no reluctance. Yu, I told you I'd listen to everything you say. In that case, left hall, Qin Yi. Yi is not a concubine. Before he could finish, Chi Huan hastily jumped out to explain. Yi is my right-hand man. Our relationship is very pure. Is that so? Cheng Yu chuckled disdainfully. Chi Huan, you had better remember what you said today. This venerable one will never allow my children's lineage to be unclear. That absolutely won't happen. Chi Huan held his hand, vowing solemnly. Yu, rest assured, I promise you a lifetime with only one person. Cheng Yu gently withdrew his hand, flicked his finger to extinguish the lamp. Sleep. Chi Huan pouted, detecting a hint of disdain in his indifferent words. She felt a bit like a bandit who had forcibly taken a fairy, and the fairy, having accidentally conceived, had to settle for living with the bandit for the sake of the children. Connecting to this, Chi Huan felt even more displeased. Even if Cheng Yu was a fairy, she shouldn't be a bandit. What bandit was as kind and beautiful as she was? Chi Huan babbled to herself, then turned and hugged Cheng Yu. Yu, do you love me so much that you're willing to bear babies for me? Seeing Cheng Yu not respond for a long time, Chi Huan simply chattered on. Yu, I'll definitely be good to you and the two little ones from now on. Ah, good babies, hurry and be born. Chi Huan continued to murmur, staring at his incomparably dignified sleeping posture. Her eyes grew brighter and brighter, and she felt a little antsy again. She rubbed her head against him coaxingly. Yu, we haven't been intimate in so long. How about tonight? Scram. Oh,